Amal Unbound by Aisha Said. Chapter 5. Read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. My father paced the length of the living room in his leather sandals while my sister and I sat at the table by the sofa trying to do our homework. His forehead was slick with sweat. His dark glasses framed his worried expression. We had a bigger house than many, but right now it felt like it was shrinking in on me. Seema and I kept stealing glances at our parents' closed room while our little sisters played in their bedroom. The sun had nearly set when my parents' bedroom door finally opened. The midwife stepped outside and smiled. My jaw unclenched. My mother was okay. She had to be if Rahila Bibi was smiling. "Congratulations," she said. "You are the father 5 times over now." "How is Manez?" he asked. "Tired, but she'll be fine. Go on in and see for yourself." My father walked into the bedroom. Seema and I followed. The lamp on the nightstand lent a soft glow to the darkened room. The little one, smaller than I expected, lay curled in a blue blanket in my mother's arms. "What is it?" my father asked. "A boy or a—" "A girl," Rahila Bibi said. "A girl?" "Yes." She looked at him. "A perfect, healthy baby girl." "Can I hold her?" I scooped the blanketed baby out of my mother's arms. I traced a finger against her soft nose, her cheeks, her curved chin with a dimple like Safa's. Rahila Bibi was right. She was perfect. My breath caught when she gripped my finger with her fist. She was so tiny, but her grip on me was so tight, as though she knew I would always protect her. Any disappointment I might have felt at not having a baby brother dissipated like powder in a running stream. "What should we name her?" I asked. "I have a notebook with the ones I like. Shifa is pretty, but I also like Maha and Maria, Lubna." That's when I realized the room was unusually quiet. I looked at my mother. She was crying. I was so eager to see the baby I hadn't noticed the tears streaming down her face. Until now. My father stood by the door. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry," my mother whispered. "Nothing to be sorry about," he said. "God does what he wants." Of course I had known they wanted a son. I heard the conversations of our neighbors and the whispers in our own house. But staring at my parents' expressions right now, I saw they didn't look disappointed. They looked crushed. I hadn't been present when my other sisters had been born. Is this how they'd reacted to them? Was it the same when I was born, or was it okay, since I was the first? Sometimes I wish I did not pay such careful attention. Maybe then I would not have learned that they thought being a girl was such a bad thing. Chapter 6. Seema and I watched over our new sister in the living room while the morning sun filtered through the windows. We both had stayed home from school all week to help, but tomorrow was Monday, and I looked forward to going back. Our father had left for the fields after morning prayer, and Safia and Rabia were still asleep. I savored the silence, cuddling the sleeping baby in my arms. "You see that?" I nudged Seema and nodded at the little one. "What?" Seema yawned. "She smiled in her sleep. She's gonna be a happy one." Seema patted the baby's soft, silky hair. "You think Amma is okay?" she asked. "She's always tired after a baby is born," I said. I remembered how it was after Safa. Parveen made all our meals and put us to bed for at least a week. Not just that, she fidgeted. She was so sad. I know, I said. As much as I tried to block it out, my parents' expressions were etched into my mind. A knock on the door interrupted our conversation. I bet it's Fawzia Auntie. Seema stood up. Thought she'd have come before now, I said. I hope she brought halibis, Seema said. Fawzia was Hafsa's mother, and usually the first to get details about any happenings in the village. No one could ever get too annoyed with her, though, because she usually came bearing her prized halibis, the twisted, sticky, orange treats that would lure anyone to the door. And with Hafsa's sister's recent engagement, she was making all sorts of desserts. Congratulations, she said when Seema opened the door. Fawzia stepped into the house before pulling off her canary-colored chowder and settling it around her shoulders. Hafsa tagged along beside her. There she is! Fawzia smiled at the baby and handed Seema her platter of assorted sweets before she walked over and took the little one from my arms. Didn't you say backaches meant boy, Amma? Hafsa frowned. Yes, that's what my mother said. Anyhow, but who can really predict these things? It's a shame, though. I thought for sure it would be a boy this time. Fawzia clucked her tongue. Is your mother handling it okay? I stared at Fawzia. How could she hold my perfect little sister and shake her head with sympathy? Amma is sleeping, Seema said. Of course. Well, I'm on my way to the tailor. Hafsa's outgrowing her clothes every time I blink. She handed the baby back to me. Tell your mother I came by. See you at school tomorrow, Hafsa said, waving. I shut the door. Did you hear her? I fumed. How dare she say that? Act so sorry for us. And with her own daughter standing right there. The tube lights above us flickered before shutting off. The overhead fans slowed to a halt. Another blackout. Seema rushed to open the windows. Last week's blackout left us without electricity for over 2 hours. Already I felt the heat rising from the concrete floor. Rabia and Safia came running into the living room. Rabia's face was streaked with tears. She glowered at Safa. She took my doll! Rabia shrieked. Before Seema and I could respond, Rabia took off after Safa, chasing her around the sofa. Safa laughed and skipped, tripping on the edge of our rug and skidding headfirst into the table. A glass perched on the edge trembled before crashing onto the floor. Water seeped onto her and into the rug. The noise echoed off the walls. Now both girls were crying. My mother must have heard the commotion. She had to. I walked over to her bedroom and peeked inside. The curtains were drawn tight. Her back was curled to the window. Her eyes shut. Amma, I asked softly, but she didn't respond. The baby began whimpering in my arms. I took a deep breath, closed the door behind me, and looked at my sisters, both of their faces wet with tears. Amma never yelled at us. Despite the younger two and their constant arguments, she found a way to be patient. Until she was better, I had to try. Fortunately, Parveen walked into the house just then. She carried a basket of laundry fresh from the clothesline and set it down before scooping the baby from me. Let me get her to your mother, she said as the overhead fan whirled back on. She's sleeping, I said. I just checked. Well, the baby needs to eat, she said. Don't worry, I'll talk to her. Seema soothed the girls while I cleaned up the shards of glass. I hadn't understood how much my mother did to keep the house running until Seema and I tried to fill her shoes. Parveen helped us, always doing laundry, washing dishes, and chopping vegetables for dinner, but the work kept piling up, and watching two boisterous little girls was a whole job unto itself. We were so busy, I barely noticed the call to evening prayers from the minaret in the distance, or the sun setting outside our window. Seema finished drying dishes with Parveen later that night, while I was putting the girls to sleep. I was hoping to sit for a few minutes when I came out of their bedroom, but cringed when I saw the basket of clothing Parveen had brought in. My mother normally ironed all the clothes as soon as Parveen pulled them off the clothesline. It kept the cotton kamises from getting hopelessly wrinkled. But today, the clothes still sat in their basket, untouched. Our school uniforms lay crumpled at the top of the heap. "I'll get the ironing board," Seema said, reading my mind. "Let's at least get tomorrow's clothes sorted out." I surveyed the house. The girls' dolls lay scattered on the sofa. The groceries Parveen picked up this afternoon rested in burlap sacks in the kitchen. Crumbs littered the rug, and there's still no sign of Amma being ready to get up and help. All she managed was to feed the baby. I still had to change the diapers. "What's wrong?" Seema asked, returning from my parents' bedroom with the iron and narrow metal board. "Everything," I said. "How are we going to keep up with it all and go to school? Look at all these clothes. It'll take me hours to go through all of them." "We'll figure out a system," Seema said. "You'll do the ironing at night after the girls go to bed, and in the morning I'll get everything organized for dinner." But I knew it was impossible. "I'm gonna have to stay home," I told Seema. "I'll stay home too then," Seema said. "No, you just switched to the upper class a few weeks ago. You can't fall behind." "But it's too much work for you to do alone. Parveen is here, too. We'll be fine. I'm sure it'll just be a few more days until Amma's back to her old self." I pressed the warm iron to Seema's uniform, hoping what I said was true.